Hello, welcome to today's vlog. It's a very different vlog. We're going to be interviewing Dirk, and Dirk is a 3DMJ client. This will be explained in the podcast, but essentially there was a post on social media about Dirk. 3DMJ posted it, and it was basically him being very, very lean 9 weeks out. Now today we're going to establish why potentially he is that lean that early on, because a lot of the comments were just commenting on the photo and not necessarily on the context. So here is some context with the photo, and basically we're going to establish how long can we theoretically stay stage ready or stage lean without it being a detriment to overall muscle loss or just overall burnout, because essentially we just want to fly near the sun for a while and then we can kind of go into the sun, get burnt. We don't really want to go right into the sun, get burnt out very, very quickly. So without further ado, here is some context into Dirk's contest prep. Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Hypertrophy Over Coffee podcast. I'm not actually used to saying that because we don't really do guest podcasts anymore. And we used to do it on the Rainy Trainer podcast, but obviously that disbanded. But we do have a special guest. I'm going to say it in the English, Dirk, but you might as well introduce yourself. So go ahead.
All right, I'm Dirk Emmerich. Like it's the English version. German version is Dirk Emmerich. So all in that. I'm 26 years old from Germany, doing bodybuilding since 2012. I'm coach from Alberto Nunez 3DMJ since 2016. And currently in contest prep right now, I think 7 weeks and 6 days out from the first show. And that's mostly it.
When you get into like the 7 weeks, it's always like 7 weeks and 6 days, or like it's like when you're on like 11 weeks, it's always like 11 weeks. That's it. But when you're like in like the 7 weeks, it's always like 6 weeks. I'm like 6 days out.
Exactly. And like when it's 3 weeks, 20 days out, 16 days out, 17 days out. Yeah.
For sure. So I think like to give some context into why Dirk's on the podcast and why we're doing a guest podcast is basically just address an Instagram post. So obviously you're coached by Alberto, and there was an Instagram post that was recently posted over on the Team 3DMJ Instagram page, and it's basically you being quite lean, significantly lean, and I think I can't remember exactly when that was posted, maybe like 2 weeks ago, so maybe you're like
ago.
9 weeks out, right?
Well, yeah, exactly, like 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
Okay, so basically to give some context, there was that post, and basically people were establishing if you can be too lean kind of that far out. Is it kind of productive for a prep, maybe even establishing the length of time of prep, and again like just establishing the length of time you should be in that kind of sucky area, right? So I think it's really important just to get some background into your bodybuilding journey, because I think that we can then establish like if it's right for the set individual, because we spoke off air and on Instagram basically about like individuals and how some people could get away with it and some people potentially can't. So I think it's important just to give some context into maybe your whole kind of bodybuilding journey, and then maybe how you mapped out between you and Bert, how you mapped out this prep.
Yeah, so all in all, like I was the typical guy who was super skinny who started out. You know, there's either like the super skinny guy or you like more on the higher body fat side of things, where you first lose weight, build on muscle, or the other way around, where you kind of like learn to eat actually. And I was all the time that guy who needed to learn how to eat. And even right now, like when I'm in off season, I'm like I'm actually quite lean, but I need to force feed myself to actually gain. I'm like, at some point I like drink a lot of liquid calories and all that stuff, and that's actually like a little bit of a struggle in the off season to like actually gain weight, not from the training side of things, like more from the nutrition side of things. Like a lot of people have an easy time. They're like, oh, I just eat, I need to keep care that I don't eat too much, that I don't get too fat. And I'm like that guy who's like, fuck, it's 9 p.m. and I need to still eat 2,000 calories. How I'm doing that, you know?
Yeah. Same with me. I mean, I'm exactly the same.
Yeah, and I'm actually still quite lean, and that's like, how is that possible? Like people can't relate, and that's like, I would say just like a body fat settling point kind of thing. where it's for some people on the lower side, some people on the higher side, and you just get out of that homeostasis mode, I would say. Like the more far away you get, the more your body is fighting, like, oh, don't get too fat, don't get too lean, and try to keep it there. And yeah, all in all, like I said, I started in 2012, and the first few years, like this was still the time where like there wasn't that much science out there. It was still like lots of pro science out there. I was still like you know what it is, like eating every 3 hours, only clean food, because with dirty food you can't gain weight. You can only gain weight, especially as a hard gainer, if you eat super clean. And then I'm like, I still don't gain weight. And
Yeah, for sure.
and but some, like, obviously, like the first 1 or 2 years you make that kind of newbie gains where you, even in a deficit, kind of, you make gains, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
So
Yeah, I see that a lot of yours, like especially early stuff, and I was stalking your Instagram earlier, was there like a lot of like calisthenics kind of stuff, like body weight work?
I started actually with calisthenics, like the first 5 or 6 months. I only did calisthenics. Like I was not even joining the gym, and I even made good gains with that. Like obviously with body weight, you can make the first like few months, you can make really good gains with that, especially when you do it like more strength focused, not like freestyle, you know, like focus on pull-ups and dips and all that. So yeah, that's how I started with that. And then I was like, I actually really enjoy like the bodybuilding side of things, like building my body and all that. And then I was like, let's join the gym. And then I started, at the gym, made more gains. And then there was a point in it around, right before I got coached from Alberto, like it was 2014, 2015, where I was like not progressing anymore. And I was like, I got a little bit frustrated actually, and was like, maybe that's not for me. I'm not getting like not as big as I want to. It feels like I'm spinning my wheels. And then that was the point where I got coached, and then I felt like a newbie again, because then I made so much gains with a way better structured program and all that. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. Within 1 year, I made so much more gains again. If I compared like to the 2 last years before, where I was not training optimally, like that good, it was like very shocking actually, like how much you can get out of it with a smarter training approach at some point.
I think you've got like two, well, 9 times out of 10, unless you've got like a coach right at the start, you have them like two little stints of like newbie gains where you're just like you're making gains, and then all of a sudden it's like it kind of slows down a little bit, and then you have like structure and you have everything else, and it's just like this whole new like level up.
It's like the intermediate stage, like all the way to the advanced stage. It's like you can still make so much gains, but that's the point where your training approach needs to be like smarter, kind of.
Yeah, for sure.
And definitely with enough food combined. So and then started in 2016. At some point I also got injured. It was, I think, at 2018, where I couldn't really train for a few months. I got like something on my elbow and knee. This was a time where I was pushing too hard in training, you know, like I think everyone has that moment where you, like, let's say, pushing too hard, forcing to get more load on the bar, like training basically like a kind of power builder approach, where you want to squat 180 kg, fuck the form, and you know.
I think we've all been there.
Exactly. And that was like I got lots of injuries, and then I got a kind of chronic one on my elbow and knee, and I was like not able to train for, I think, like a few months. And then I came back at it, obviously, with muscle memory, came all back very quickly. It was also a time where I was traveling across Thailand, was training there as well. And that was also really cool, because I also made gains while in the totally, like, in Asia, in a foreign country. That was amazing time for sure. And and all in all, like, since I started, I knew that I wanted to compete, but I waited all these years because I was like, I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet. I want to be competitive. And that's why I waited like 8 or 9 years to actually start competing. And
that's exactly why I didn't. I didn't do it, but I think you always get to that, like, we'll talk about this obviously later down in the podcast, but it's always like you get to like quite significantly lean, and then you go, right, okay, I've lost quite a bit of like muscle here. I'm not going to be competitive, and then you just go back up, and that's basically what I did. And yeah, it sounds like you've kind of done the same thing. So
Especially the first few diets, like especially when you do it on your own, like the first 2 or 3 fat loss phases aren't that great, like.
I think that's also a very important context when we move this on to like I think that you have dieted for like this is probably like what your third, fourth time maybe potentially.
Yeah, I think you 4th or 5th time actually. Yeah,
Right. And then like every single kind of diet phase, even between 1, 2, 3, you're always going to kind of hold on to more tissue, or theoretically should hold on to more tissue, right?
definitely. It's a skill. Yeah.
Yeah. And we obviously discussed like previously that potentially if you are like maybe in your third or second cycle of dieting, potentially like being this lean this far out could be a really bad problem, like a really like especially under muscled, but you've got quite a lot of muscle. um but yeah, interesting nonetheless. We'll obviously speak about that in just a sec, but so in terms of like where the conversation between you and Bert, so when was it time to kind of decide, right, okay, now we're gonna kind of push hammer down on prep? Or
It actually we planned it last year, but it was too uncertain, and I'm actually super happy that we didn't done it last year because, as you know, so many shows were cancelled. And then we said, let's wait 1 year. And this year, with the vaccine and everything, it seems very much safer than last year to
yeah,
pull the trigger this year. So yeah, all in all, like we decided it, yeah, last year I would say, to like, yeah, we are ready. Let's go for it. And but let's wait 1 year because of the COVID situation, and then we, yeah, started it. We had also like one fat loss phase together before in 2017. Why this was actually right before my big injury. We actually planned to compete in 2018, I think, but then because of my injury and then I was traveling, it was like, yeah, a little bit, yeah, later than planned.
mhm.
So yeah, all in
Yeah, I think
all.
I think that's important. Again, important context that Alberto's kind of coached you. It would have been throughout two fat loss phases,
Mm,
and kind of knows you and knows what you can take, and potentially knows that you hang at quite a kind of like low body fat percentage, right? So if
yeah,
you see that like someone is hanging low and also training performance isn't that bad, it's actually quite good, then
exactly.
there's kind of a
Mm.
I think that the more fat loss phases you have with a client as well, you get to know little tiny details as well. Um, but in terms of like, what was the plan with prep? So when did you start? When was the plan to compete? What's the plan with kind of the whole of your kind of season, on season, as it were? What has been the whole plan for the whole of your prep, if that makes sense?
We started planning, let me think, I think it was
Right.
end of last year, beginning of this year. Then there was also the lockdown situation where we, yeah, also did like the home training and all that stuff. And yeah, we basically planned it like we still were we were like 90% end of last year, beginning of this year, like 90%. Let's see how the situation goes with the vaccine, with everything. And then at March we said 100%. 1st of May,
Right.
we
So
start
so
to
was
prep.
this so was this an amassing phase? So the between stages, or was it like maintenance or
Like during the lockdown, it was a maintenance phase. Yeah.
right? So it's
For
like maintenance from like maybe like January till May, would that be right?
let me think. I think it was like December until March. Then I
Right.
was back at the gym at middle of March, and then had like a very quick gaining phase for like a few weeks to like acclimate to the higher loads again and all that with
Right.
enough food. So yeah, we definitely like were overfeeding a little bit right before we
Okay.
started the prep. Yeah.
Cool. So then it was like the 1st of May, it was like, right, let's go for a show in X day, or was it just a plan of getting you very, very lean and then hanging you somewhere, or
All we already had like the shows picked, like kind of the season at September, October. like
Right.
this time frame. Like we knew like at this time I would step on stage. And since it was also since like the first prep, it's like a little bit unpredictable. Like at the first month, I lost body fat so much. It was Alberto were shocked, like how good my body reacts to a deficit. He was like, "Oh, is Dirk just faking it?" Like he has no issues with like water retention, with like making adjustments. His body is like, let's give the fat away. Like my body is like not fighting at all against that. And then we was like, oh, take a step back and having like a lot, like taking the deficit to like 50 to 100 on most days, like super slow, because otherwise I would be ready in, I don't know, in July and like ready, you know. And this would be like very like from a hormonal perspective. Obviously, there's always that one point where everyone kind of like where the body self-destructs itself, you know, and you don't want to hang on too long at that point.
No.
So then we like kind of slowed it down. And
Right.
yeah.
Okay. So do you think you're there now, or do you think you're right on that point, or do you think you're
Actually, right now I'm right at that point where I'm like getting leaner than that.
right?
It gets uncomfortable to hold that. Right, like right now, the body fat I have right now is like basically now I'm feeling nearly like in the off season, like well-being wise, like just holding it. Obviously, like training performance is still good, making very little progress, but it's not like compared to the off season where I like hit new numbers week by week, where I have like also that let's say aggression during training where I can push really hard. That's what I'm not having right now. But like in regards to like well-being, socializing, food focus and stuff, I'm like on most days very easygoing. But I know, let's say, taking half a kilo away of my body fat right now, this would be the point where I'm like, okay, I would feel it on every day, you know, like it's like this threshold right now.
So is the plan right now to kind of hold and then dip you into that stage, into that kind of
Exactly.
kilo, right?
Yeah, that's the plan from tomorrow. Like tomorrow is 7 weeks out, and now we like let's get into the danger zone, if you will, and take that like around last 2 kg off, and then eating into the show. Like that's now perfect timing for that. Like still with like so much mental capacity to push. That's like the good thing about it, that we took it slow most of the time.
Yeah, I think the very important context is you obviously your body loves to kind of lose fat or lose weight. I can really resonate with that because again, like in my off seasons, I have to push calories really high to kind of gain weight.
The same, man. Yeah.
Yeah, and then when I kind of push down, like even this time, me and Steve are kind of or having a conversation about maybe potentially next prep we're just going to shorten the length. Would that potentially be something that you'd be doing, or?
I'm thinking so. I think like next prep we would definitely start later, like
Right.
for sure. Like that, but that's the thing. Like the first prep, it's like, oh, I wanted to be at my absolute freaking best, and then maybe plan a little bit more time in, you know,
Yeah.
because you actually don't 100% know how it's going, and that's a good thing. It's like getting some data going, and like you said in your case, like shortening the length next time, and I think that's also really individual, and
Yeah, for sure.
also regards to the starting point where you're at right now.
Yeah. So what would you say would be? So I'm trying to think of the length of your prep. It'd be like the 1st of May, you said, till so it'd be like September. So what would that be like? 4, 5 months? I'm trying to think. From May to
May,
4 months, right?
yeah, like 5 months, nearly 5 months, like all in all, yeah, like 20 to 24 weeks.
24 weeks. So you'd say what potentially you could go for maybe like 16?
Honestly, I would say between 12 to 16 weeks, I think.
That's what
Like
I'd
having like the first show like 12 weeks in, and then like a final, like the ultimatum, like 16 weeks, something like that.
yeah.
It's actually like ridiculous. Like, oh, like a 10 to 12 week prep. For some people, it can work, definitely.
Yeah, I think that the like length of prep would be dependent on a couple of things, and number one would be preference, because some people just want to have that social aspect of like, I just want it to suck for 16 weeks and I'm just gone, right? And then some people like to have like 52 weeks of just taking your time and just being a little bit more flexible and stuff, and maybe 1 week pushing it to like 1% and then 1 week not pushing it that far, and etc. So I think essentially with it's almost like the massing phase, I feel like that is quite individual, as long as like a few proxies are in place.
Mm.
um and then also you have like the length of prep wise, you have obviously starting body fat percentage, which you were in quite a favorable position with,
Mm.
especially maybe. I'm trying to think that, do you think that it would have been, you would have been in with the length of prep that you have, if you potentially had like a bigger massing phase, if you had, say for example, we didn't have the lockdowns, obviously we couldn't help that, but potentially you had like an off season all the way until you're like the 1st of May, do you
Yeah.
reckon that we would be having that conversation if that happened, if that makes sense?
Actually, I started the prep at around like 70, 75 kg.
Right.
So overall, I just lost like 3 kg since I started that prep. So
Well,
that's huge actually.
yeah.
And like the peak of my messing phases is like 72 kg to 73. It's like then I physically can't eat more. It's like my body it's impossible like to get food in.
Yeah.
So I would say maybe like, let's say like 4 weeks or something like on top of that. Like, or actually like if I would have started at 1st May with a higher body fat percentage, we didn't like put in like that much like pauses and breaks,
Mhm.
and going like a little bit more assertive with it.
Yeah.
So, but I would still say it's what would be like optimal timing for sure.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think like, do you think that like what, so you obviously you compared the prep like feeling, you're saying is sometimes like an off season. Do you think that like, so I know some comments were basically like, you're saying you feel good, but potentially you don't know what feeling good is because the off season was so far away? Or do you actually like think that it's like, oh no, this is, I feel good?
That like the comments about like, oh, that feeling like shit is the new normal.
Yeah,
Now I can still remember a lot like how I'm feeling in my off season, kind of like
right,
energy wise, like socializing wise, and all that. I mean, obviously, it's like very tiny, like lower energy, especially at the evening. I feel like some tasks just feel a little bit harder than usual, but
mm,
it's like not a big difference. The only thing is like being in a deficit. I definitely feel like being in a deficit or being near maintenance with that body fat. And when I'm right now in a deficit, I definitely feel like way lower energy, more hunger, and
right,
all that things. But when I'm like right now, like the last weeks on maintenance, I'm like basically on my wheel feeds, I sometimes even forget to eat, like get enough veggies in.
right.
It's like because I'm down like 650 to 675 grams of carbs, what is like a huge amount.
Wait,
And
675 grams of carbs, you say,
yeah,
on your refeeds?
yeah,
Right. So what? Wait. So what we at the minute with like in terms of calories and the deficit? What would that look like on a
like
normal day?
starting from tomorrow, like where we like digging now, or just the last 2 weeks.
Maybe do both.
Like now the last 2 weeks we kind of like, let's say like keeping the feet up, chilling, eating like kind of near maintenance, like a super tiny deficit. Like on my low days I have like 5 low days and 2 high days, and on the low days my calories were at, like we are working within ranges, so no
Yeah.
set numbers, like 2,900 to like 3,000, around that on my low days. And yeah, the fats are kind of low, like 40 to 45 grams, protein 190 to 210, and 450 to 460 grams of carbs on the low days. And on the high days, we are at 3,900 to 4,000 calories. And
Damn.
yeah,
Yeah. I
and
think I think that's important context for people as well, because I think that if you are hanging, I get the conversation with like no amount of calories is going to kind of get you out of that suck, because I myself, like I can lose weight on like 2,500. My refeeds are like 3,200.
Yeah.
But essentially, like you do feel shit at that level. I think that's important context, but also realize that potentially, like if you are at your body fat percentage now and you're eating like say 1,500 calories, for example, I think that the conversation would kind of go even further and think, oh fuck, like
Oh yeah, definitely.
yeah,
That's like definitely a big difference. So like on my Wii feeds, it's like if you like eat it with mostly like rice and oats and corn cereals and stuff, it's like a huge amount of food.
yeah,
So
that sounds
that
about
was also one thing people talk to, like, oh, he's eating so big meals, like he's probably so food focused, but actually it's like I need to eat that big meals because
yeah,
I eating so much calories on that day. So, and I prefer like having like 3 big meals per day and one snack instead of like much small meals. Like
right.
that's like an adherence thing for me. Like it's just also in the off season, I like it's just more stress free for me. Like having just 3 meals, one
I think
snack.
that's probably like more so like dieting preference as well. Like potentially if you're eating like 5 meals a day, but it's deemed quote unquote optimal, like
Mm,
you're not going to enjoy it that much. And I think a big part of dieting in general, and even like bodybuilding, like it is in an off season, if you don't enjoy it, you're not going to fucking do it. Especially you're not gonna give it your all. It's quite funny because like at times like like even on refeeds I'm struggling to get this last meal in, and it's so weird in a deficit because you're trying to slow the rate of loss down so much that you're just like, I just need
feels
to eat this.
wrong. It
Yeah,
feels wrong.
yeah, it does, which is really weird saying like in a fat loss phase or in prep, like again considering how lean you are, it's just like you're struggling to get food in prep and you're like at this body fat percentage.
Yeah, and sometimes it screws with your head because it
Yeah,
feels so wrong eating 4,000 calories on my Wii feeds,
yeah,
and then like going from like the digging phase into like the quote unquote maintenance phase. Obviously, you also start holding like the first few days or 1 or 2 weeks a little bit more water because of
yeah,
increased food intake, increased sodium intake, and then you're like, did I added some fat? And like it
yeah,
sometimes screws with your head a
yeah,
little
for
bit.
sure.
But then when you look at some specific, especially like if my glutes are still striated and all that, I'm like, okay, it's
Yeah,
just my stomach is like getting a little bit blown
distended.
up. Exactly. And yeah, that's the thing, man. And
Yeah, I think with like, so what would be because I do the kind of refeed approach. What would be the kind of I'm trying to think. Why not kind of increase food throughout the week if that makes sense? Why not just add in more food? Is that from a dieting preference standpoint, or is that from potentially like replenishing glycogen and just trying to slow the rate of loss down?
you mean like during the Wii feeds?
Yeah. So you obviously have like the 5 days of like being like digging and then or being low, and then you have like two refeeds. Is that right?
Yes, but not the last 2 weeks. Like the last weeks, like even the low days were like a mini dig. Like like
Right.
I just felt it a little bit after like 4 or 5 days, but it was not like really like a huge deficit.
Right. Okay.
So that we're starting like tomorrow, where we're going to reduce 100 grams of carbs on every day,
Right.
which is actually ridiculous to like play with numbers like that
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
during that part of web where we say, oh, let's reduce 100 grams of carbs. And then Berto said, let's see how that goes. Maybe we do another 50 after 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And that's like the thing, like we waited all the time and now kind of,
Yes.
yeah, striking with
So
it.
now you're saying that like this is the where you were for you was potentially where most people could hold, and then you're dipping into that kind of lower end of kind of settling point. Well, you
Yeah,
are at the
where
lower end
everything is
now.
going into now, like 7, 8 weeks out is usually always the point where people go into the kind of like, yeah, let's be more focused, let's digging, like in this so-called digging phase where, yeah, things getting
Yeah.
hard.
I think like essentially the whole thing is going to boil down to like let's just see what happens in 7 weeks, right? Like again, like I think that and maybe not even in 7 weeks because I don't think you'll be doing one show, right? You're not going to
No,
be.
we plan actually do like 4 to 5 shows.
It'd be interesting. So where are the five shows? Are they in Germany or
The first one is the AMBF in Austria.
right?
Heard about it. Then the GmbF in Germany.
Right.
Maybe the UK DFBA finals. I got invited to it, but let's see with COVID how that goes. And then the WNBF in Germany, and then the main goal is to like qualify for the Worlds in Las Vegas in
So that'll be
November.
in November. Is that
Yes,
right?
yes.
So
20th, I think. Yeah.
So what would be the plan for that then? That would be quite interesting to go into. So you're obviously going into that like sucky bit now. Would the plan be to stay there until November or
Like what Alberto told me is like actually like getting there in the deficit is way harder than maintaining it.
right?
Like it's more stress for the body, like being in a deficit when getting that lean than to kind of remain like eating at maintenance.
Right.
I mean, it's it's still kind of hard, but way easier. Like you said, like eating into the show, and that's actually the plan. Like at beginning of end of September, beginning of October, that we are like basically like peaked every day
Mhm.
and just holding it. It's like he could like wake me up in the middle of the night saying, let's do a show, and I would be like ready to go for it.
Yeah.
And that's the plan then from October all the way going, going for it.
Sweet. Yeah, I think again, I think it's just a case of like let's just see what happens. Like if you and I think this is a good point that I think essentially if you kind of like come in like under muscled or you've kind of screwed this up, essentially you've got like future preps which you obviously proved like maybe potentially 2 years ago you had that fat loss phase and then you kind of called it a day and then you went up and whatever, right? Essentially like you could, if you do fuck this up and potentially like obviously I don't want that to happen, right? But potentially if you do fuck that up you can also learn from that and then come back. I think that like people think there's just like one shot at prep, but essentially there's like shows every single year. So
Yeah, and then that's the part, like you learn from every prep, and even if we would fuck it up, and I'm very confident about that we won't, it would be something to learn from, especially the first prep. Like actually like in the part, like everyone's first prep isn't perfect, and more people fucked it up than had a successful one, like on paper. So yeah, that's the thing. So I'm not worrying too much about it, and we like confidently like doing our thing and trusting the process. That's like the thing. And
yeah.
especially with Alberto, with his experience, and he's saying like it will work definitely. Like he's also saying like obviously he's not doing that with every client. Like that's a super special case for himself as well. But also from his own experience, because he did like, I don't know if you saw his
Yeah.
last recent story. He was holding like peak condition from June until October, man, like 4 months. That's like sick.
Yeah.
And
I think his story the other day was very similar to you because again, like Bert is he's heavily muscled, right? And also he has to push food up very, very high in his off seasons, and he can kind of diet with like a reasonable amount of food as well.
yeah,
But again, like essentially it's like in Bert we trust, right? And essentially you have to trust your coach, you have to trust what he's doing
I
because you're
trust
paying
him
for
so
it.
much. Yeah.
Exactly, you're paying for that, and you're also kind of having that. One thing that I didn't necessarily like was like, and we won't go too much into the comments, but essentially with the comments, it's kind of like if you didn't have that coach who like Bert, for like especially like Bert, to kind of just like almost have you in this like, have you seen like the Gordon Ramsay when he has the sandwiches between the head and he's like calling them an idiot sandwich? Essentially, like having someone like that, like having comments kind of directed at you and having someone like as a coach going just stick to the plan. I think that's so important because again, like it's you could listen to some of the comments and go, oh shit, like let's pull out and then we'll kind of diet again next year. But
No way. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. But I think you just kind of got to stick to the plan and just see what happens. Like you've got future preps
Exactly.
to nail it. If you don't nail it, which I have no doubt in my mind that you will. So
Yeah, that's the thing. And like that's why like some people like criticized it or reacted that way, because it's very special and unique. And it's not only in bodybuilding, like in all like things in life. If you do something unique, different, it's always gets kind of like criticism or people not want to accept it because it goes against their own experience.
Right.
And some people may had like a kind of similar approach where they were ready too early, and because they didn't had all the strategies and always pushed hard at rule prep, always chasing it, and then they burned themselves out too quickly without all the strategies what Alberto and me are implementing. They have like that experience of like that bad experience, like losing tissue and coming in super flat, and then it's like, oh, it will be the same probably for him as well because I had this experience. And that's like the thing about like being like more open-minded about new things, and that's like how the sports is evolving in all that things about everything. So they need to try sometimes new things and then see how it goes, and if it fails, it's still a success because you learn from it. So
exactly. Like failures are experience, aren't they, at the end of the day? And we obviously spoke about like the ability to know when to strike as well. I think that comes with like training experience. When you kind of have the ability to go, right, okay, this week potentially not the best time to strike, and potentially like this week I'm like, okay, which it sounds like that's what you're doing. You're like, okay, now we strike.
All about experience. Exactly. It's the same with off-season training. Like sometimes you have training sessions where you feel like off in the off-season, and then when you go super hard, you injure yourself, or you're creating so much unnecessary fatigue that it like impacts your upcoming sessions. And then that's all also the same. You need to know like when to go very hard and when to like back off a little bit. And I think it's kind of similar to like also prep, like how many weeks are you out, and then like planning a little bit ahead, like is it now a good idea to push or not to push, even if you feel like it. Like for me it was like on some weeks very hard because it felt like a reverse off season to me, like dieting so slow, not seeing much visual progress, not making that much progress training wise. It was where we had to like not just saying fuck it and like push hard. That's like so much patience that it teach me as well. Like because I didn't have not much times in this program, I was like this exciting periods where you see like weekly changes, what like most people experience in their contest prep, like huge like visual changes. And I felt like until today like a reverse off season, like I said, like 3 kg are down, but it's not like this huge weekly changes that most people have when they like dieting. And now I'm kind of excited to like, oh yeah, now is the time to push. And also like this keeps someone also more like motivated and all that during the process, when you have like that visual weekly changes. And that makes it easier to like feel like shit a little bit on some days, but what you're getting in return.
Yeah, for sure. I think again that comes down to the length of prep and also like the ability to strike, like knowing to strike. Because if you didn't see like the weekly changes right at the start, you're probably just going to go, right, okay, fuck it, let's just decrease calories and let's like make this bit suck. And you could have potentially been in the kind of the lower kind of body fat percentage now, like fucking like 3 or 4 weeks ago, or maybe even like 2 or 3 weeks into prep.
Definitely, yeah.
So I think if you did that, I think that's when you're going, right, okay, now we're
now we're like Berto was like holding me back sometimes, like saying, Dirk, trust me.
Yeah.
Like don't like decrease the food, let's keep at it. And I'm actually very very glad that I do so all the time, that I trust him with everything and do what he's saying. And that's the thing, like also about having a coach. Like without a coach, I probably like, if you're your own coach, like being more emotional and like, oh, I want to push, let's go for it, and then you pay the price.
Yeah, for sure. I think essentially we we love this is going to sound weird. We love the suck, right? We love like feeling like crap all the time, or not all the time, but we kind of, that's kind of like really like
the challenge. Yeah.
It's almost like, okay, this is me. This is what we have to do now.
Exactly. And when like the challenge is taken away, when it feels like I said on my Wii feed, when I feel like being in the off season, it's like it feels wrong. It's like that's too easy to be true,
Yeah.
Like, and you actually want to have that suck and challenge, but you should not, like, if you chase it all the time, you eventually get burned out. That's the difference. Needing to know when, yeah, to embrace the suck, and when, like, to keep it more chill.
Yeah, sweet, cool. I think we'll leave that there. I think it was very interesting conversation. I think that again, it's going to be something that we could revisit in like maybe in November and go, right, okay, what did you learn, etc. That would be a cool thing to kind of go through and potentially like, did it work, right? Which,
oh, I think this would be freaking amazing.
yeah,
Definitely.
yeah,
Like,
we'll set that up for sure.
so amazing.
Cool.
Like that's also what Alberto said. Like he also wanted, like, saying more about all this after the prep, because results speak for itself. That's
sure.
like, that's the thing. And if it works, what we think, so definitely, then it's like I said, the results speak for itself, and then people can't really argue against it.
No.
Like, obviously for the general, like for the majority of people, obviously maybe not the best approach, but like being just more open-minded, that for some individuals this approach can work.
Yeah, I think we obviously spoke about this. Like, I think that abnormal or like a kind of anomalies within bodybuilding is a lot more common than people think. Like, there's not, like, again, there's just not a one size fits all where one prep is gonna fit everyone. It's always going to be like, your approach might not fit me, or my approach might not fit you, and it's just like, there is, as much as everyone says it's not, like, obviously prep is prep or whatever, you're just going to get like people with way different kind of personality types, and people who hold like you as well, who can diet on like 2,000 or nearly 3,000 calories, and some people can't. Some people will have to go down to like 1,700 calories.
Exactly, and that's the same with everything, with the off season, with your meal timing, with your style of training. It's like so individual. Like, I see some pro athletes, if I would train like Doug Miller, I would be like, no way, this would work for me. Or if I would have like a similar like nutrition approach, like this or that person, this would be like, I could not stick to it. And that's the same with prep. I think it's like not like one size fits all. It's like very individual. And yeah, that's being said, definitely, that I think it's important thing to see, like, also like you said, personality types, everything, that it's also plays a huge role in regards to the success of each athlete.
For sure. Sweet. We'll leave it there. Where can people find you? And then people can see exactly the physique that we're on about, and they'll be like, oh, fucking hell.
Yeah, mate, I'm actually right now only active on Instagram. My name there's Dirk Emmerich, and bottom, how do I say it in English?
Underscore.
Exactly, yeah. So DIRKEMMERE.
If you can't find it, by the way, just DM me on Instagram, and I'll.
And yeah, there I post updates, and yeah, digging starts next week, so I will definitely like put in more, like, everything, physique updates, all that. Like, the last 2 weeks been a little bit more quiet because not much was going on in regards to that. Kept it really chill, and yeah, that's being said, 100 grams less carbs from tomorrow, so this will be a huge difference.
Yeah,
like with everything. Yeah.
Sweet. I will speak to you soon, guys. And thank you for coming on, Dirk.
Easy. Thanks for having me, man.
And that's it. That is basically it. I hope you enjoyed the start of that vlog. Hopefully you got some more insight. Again, individuality is massive within contest preps, in my opinion. In my opinion, I wholeheartedly trust what Dirk and Alberto are doing. Yes, from an outsider's perspective, it might look a little bit weird, but we are all individual people, right? And what works for someone might not work for another person, etc, etc, etc. Anyway, speak to you in the next video.